You can come in now.
A visit to the dentist is many people's idea of a nightmare. And for much of our history, that's exactly what it was.
Agonizing toothaches, horrifying extractions, and ill-fitting false teeth have cast this dark shadow over our dental past.
I'm Professor Joanna Burke, and whilst writing and researching a recent book about the history of pain, I discovered that down the centuries, our teeth have been a constant source of agony, suffering, and woe.
In a world of perfect smiles and pain-free procedures, we've overcome many of the things that made dentistry and our teeth something to be feared.
So why does sitting in the dentist's chair still evoke images of torture and horror?
I think history has a lot to answer for. The past has left an indelible mark on our collective memory.
In this film, I'll chart how dentistry has been transformed from a medieval backstreet horror show into a gleaming modern science. Along the way, I'll discover the horrifying lengths some would go to achieve the perfect smile.
So basically, if you're rich enough, you can actually get dead men's teeth.
I'll get hands-on with the barbaric tools of the trade.
I stick it in someone's mouth.
Carefully, yeah.
And I uncover the unlikely story of how a convicted criminal revolutionized our dental health.
A great thing.
Oh no, this is, I broke it. This is the story of our teeth and of those who have tried to fix them.
Rotten and neglected teeth have been a part of daily life since the dawn of time. But for thousands of years, the only real treatment for a toothache was extraction, and there have always been those willing to oblige. If you had a painful tooth in medieval England, you might take your chances with the brute strength of the local blacksmith, or try your luck with another equally unlikely candidate. The barber. Because in the medieval age, barbers didn't just cut hair. At this modern barbershop, I'm meeting Professor Damien Walmsley, who has researched the brutal beginnings of modern dentistry.
Damien, tell me, if we were living in medieval England, and let's say I had a really, really bad toothache, what would I do?
Well, it depends on how much money you had. I mean, if you didn't have much money, you would go to the common blacksmith and you wouldn't know what they would be doing to your teeth to take them out. But if you did have money, you'd come to the barber surgeon.
So these are barbers, these are people who do your hair?
That's right, yes. They do bloodletting in the medieval ages, but they'd also take teeth out.
So what kind of training would these dental surgeons get?
They would have been relying on watching the master do the work, and then an apprenticeship they'd have taken over. And do you want to see what they used?
Yes, what?
Here we have simple pliers.
Oh.
So there we are, Joanna. Have a look at those.
Oh, they're really crude.
They are
Really
very crude.
How would you actually use them? Show
Well,
me.
I've got a beer bottle.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you
So-
to take the cap off with those pliers.
Would
You
it
probably
around
have to
the
hold,
teeth?
you've got to use one hand, or try and use one hand.
Oh.
Yes, it's not...
And you just, and this is the tooth, and you just
trying
pull.
to pull, and it's not easy.
Oh.
You've got no leverage
No,
there.
I can't.
You've got
I
no
can't.
lever, so you can't get at that. So if you're using such instruments, you would have had to try and get a good application, and you probably ended up grabbing most of the bone, the skin. So as you're taking out with this, you probably took out a lot more than the tooth. And that's if you got the right tooth in the first place.
In medieval England, extractions weren't just performed for toothache. They were also used as a form of torture and punishment. Those who ate meat during Lent were handed over to the tooth drawer, who would then pull out their front teeth as a warning to other sinners.
Those are the pliers. I've got underneath here something called the pelican. Pelican because it resembled the beaks of a bird.
So how would you actually use this?
This part was placed against the skin, and so you would hook onto the teeth, press against the bone, and then actually lever the tooth out. That motion then was picked up with something called a key. And this is, to me, more barbaric, because it actually
looks like a bottle opener.
Yes, yes, very much so. So if you've got the lower, I'm onto the lower teeth there, you would put that on here.
And then you just go...
Go very, very quickly. Speed was the essence.
Oh.
Ow. So you can see that that could have been really catastrophic for the patient.
Yes, yeah.
There's every chance, as you were ripping that out, it ripped out bone, skin, other teeth.
So I think the message is you don't want to have a toothache in this period of history.
No, you don't.
Very
I think that it would have been a very uncomfortable experience and would not have been pleasant at all, with a high chance of infection and a high chance of having to go back again to have the whole procedure done yet again.
For centuries, if you had a throbbing or broken tooth, the savage methods of the barber surgeon were the only treatment available. But having a toothache in the medieval era could be more than painful. It could be fatal.
In 1665, the year of the Great Plague, if we exclude the thousands of plague victims, around 10% of all fatalities in London were due to teeth. Is it any wonder that dentistry was associated with horror and with death? For much of the past 500 years, that's essentially what it was.
For dentistry to move beyond the blunt arts of tooth pulling, aspiring dentists would need to understand the causes of toothache and, more importantly, the anatomy of our teeth. In the 17th and 18th centuries, the worlds of art, philosophy, politics, and science would undergo profound changes. Driving this was the embrace of reason and logic as the way to understand the world. This new movement would become known as the Enlightenment, and dentistry would also be swept up in this intellectual revolution. Previously, the world of dentistry was riddled with absurd theories and populated by charlatans and fraudsters. Even in the 17th century, a myth still persisted that toothache was caused by worms living in the teeth. Its reputation for quackery and the fact that most dentists were lowly barbers or blacksmiths meant that the profession was held in very low regard. Here, at the Royal Society in London, is a rare first edition of a remarkable book that, for the first time, applied scientific rigor to our teeth. Its author was a man named John Hunter, who is often remembered as an anatomist and pioneering surgeon. But Hunter was also a key figure in turning dentistry into a modern science. As a young man, Hunter had failed to forge a career in medicine, so instead he turned his attention to dentistry. I'm meeting medical historian Wendy Moore, who is an authority on Hunter's life.
This is John Hunter's first book. It was published in 1771 and the second part in 1778. And it's one of the most important books in the history of dentistry. And that's because it's really the first in English comprehensive look at the anatomy of the teeth and the jaws. And it really places dentistry on a scientific basis for the first time.
So it's called The Natural History of the Human Teeth.
Yep.
Explaining their structure, use, formation, growth, and diseases. That's pretty comprehensive.
Exactly, and you can see from the contents, he looks at every aspect of the jaw and the teeth, the muscles of the jaw, the structure of the teeth, the substance of the teeth, the number of teeth, and also he describes the classes or the names of the teeth. So before they were known as the incisors, the canines, and the grinders, but he came up with 4 classes of teeth. And he gives them the names of incisors, cuspids, bicuspids, and molars.
Hunter's naming and classification of the teeth is still in use around the world today.
He Discusses the importance of cleaning the teeth. He actually mentions eating fruit and salad to keep the teeth clean. He talks about decay, but perhaps what's most remarkable about the book is these exquisite drawings.
They're amazing. They're so detailed.
They're absolutely beautiful and beautifully accurate.
Yes.
From different angles. And here's a lovely cross-section of the jaw showing the roots of the teeth, which they called fangs at the time.
So these really detailed illustrations, these would have been used for teaching purposes primarily, is that right?
Well, partly, yes. I mean, certainly for teaching students and also qualified surgeons and physicians, but also general interest. People would buy the book as a work of art and as an instructive manual. At the time, dentistry was really looked down upon by most physicians and surgeons. And effectively, what he did was to make dentistry a respectable profession.
As well as setting dentistry on the road to becoming this modern science, Hunter's book also popularized a rather controversial dental procedure, the transplanting of human teeth. In this satirical cartoon, a dentist is pulling the teeth from a chimney sweep, ready to be implanted into the waiting mouth of an aristocratic lady. Lurking in the background is a grotesque character inspecting his new set of gnashes, which had been pulled from two poor children. Few of these transplanted teeth took permanent root, and there was a real risk of contracting diseases like syphilis. But that didn't deter the vain rich. John Hunter had fueled a craze, which meant the teeth of the poor became a prized asset to be bought and sold. But within a few years, it was the teeth of the dead that would grab the public's imagination. In the early 19th century, human teeth became an increasingly valuable commodity. In fact, they were so in demand that grave robbers could earn the equivalent of £10,000 a night, stealing the teeth from corpses. These grisly trophies of the dead were used to make lifelike dentures for the rich.
But in 1815, these grave robbers almost went out of business. In June that year, 50,000 men were slaughtered at the Battle of Waterloo.
As night fell, ghoulish scavengers arrived on the battlefield and began to pull the teeth from the dead and dying.
And their teeth, they flooded the British market. As a consequence, even the toothless middle classes could afford to buy their own grin.
The era of fashionable false teeth had arrived. One of the largest collections of false teeth in the world is managed by the British Dental Association. False teeth have a long history. The ancient Etruscans, who lived in what's now Tuscany, were making serviceable gold dentures from around 700 BC. Curator Rachel Bairstow has catalogued hundreds of sets of false teeth, including those made from the dead soldiers of Waterloo.
Rachel, I've heard so much about Waterloo teeth. What do they actually look like?
Oh, well, here we go. We've got a treat for you.
Ooh.
So this is a set of Waterloo teeth. So you can see it's a carved ivory denture, a full set, top
Ivory.
and bottom.
Yes.
Yeah, this is hippopotamus or walrus ivory was
Yes.
commonly used. And here we have the human teeth. They're riveted into place with these metal pins to make this rather wonderful set.
And how would you actually fix them inside your mouth?
Well, they'd have gold piano wire springs attached on the sides here, which would attempt to keep it in the mouth through the pressure that would force it up and force it down.
And very difficult to eat with, I'm assuming.
Oh, absolutely. I should think that they probably took it out and chopped up their food another way rather than attempting to eat with this.
I find it amazing. These are actually human teeth.
These are actually human teeth taken from the soldiers from the battlefields of Waterloo. So those healthy teeth that they could find from those dead bodies, here they are, strung up for sale. So these could be purchased from the markets, from some dental catalogues.
So basically, if you're rich enough, you can actually get dead men's teeth.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, you know, they were very popular to London's wealthy because they just look so much more real.
How long would they actually last in someone's mouth?
Not very long. If you've got to imagine that this is probably a putrid mouth already, there's a lot going on in there. It's not very nice. And ivory is going to decay and it's going to rot in the mouth. So no, for such an expensive set, they're really not going to last very long.
As ivory dentures would rot in the mouth, social gatherings would have been unbelievably smelly due to all the reeking breath. In the 19th century, the trend for ladies to carry fans wasn't anything to do with flirting, but to keep bad breath from delicate noses.
So it's one size fits all. There must have been unhappy customers, to put it mildly.
There were unhappy customers, and this is a letter from a vicar in Wales who is actually complaining about his set of porcelain teeth here.
Okay, so this is a Thomas Bateman, 1810.
Yes, and he's writing to a dentist in London, and he's complaining that his set of mail-order teeth don't fit. And what can be done? But there's no way of measuring the mouth, and it literally is mail order, one size fits all.
Yeah. So this is not a good solution. When does this start improving?
It starts improving in the 1840s. And
so long after Bateman?
Long after Bateman, I'm afraid. He doesn't get the benefit of vulcanite.
OK, so this is vulcanite. So
yes. This is a rubber coming from America.
It's a lot lighter.
It's a lot lighter. Yeah. It's much cheaper. It's much more cost-effective. It's much easier for the dentist to make this.
And it looks better.
It looks better. Yeah. It's pink.
It's pink, yes. It looks better. It would fit better. It's more easy to eat with these ones?
Yes, it's much easier to eat with these. They were cheaper to mend and fix. And a set of these would probably last you your lifetime. So, you know, combine that with an anaesthetic, you would have a complete clearance of the mouth, and a set of these fitted. You know, that's cost-effective dentistry for the rest of your life, isn't it? That's what was thought.
False teeth were a potent symbol of the dentist's stock in trade. Bloody and painful extractions. To protect our teeth from the ravages of decay, new inventions would be needed to help keep them clean. In 1780, a rag trader named William Addis was arrested near Spitalfields in London for his part in organising an anti-government riot. He was found guilty and thrown into Newgate jail. While sitting in his squalid new home, he had a remarkable brainwave.
In his cell, William Addis was attempting to clean his teeth using a piece of old rag when he saw a broom in the corner. Realizing that a brush would be much more effective, he set about making a prototype.
Addis had used a piece of bone left over from his supper to make a handle, and he persuaded a guard to buy him some bristles. The modern toothbrush was born. Here at the Kent Brush Factory in Hemel Hempstead, they still make brushes by hand, using methods and materials that William Addis would recognize. When he started experimenting with his new invention, William Addis realized that for an effective but gentle brush, he would need to add a rather special ingredient: pig bristles. Today, Kent imports their fine pig hair from Siberia, where the cold climate produces a sturdy bristle, perfect for toothbrushes.
So how long would it take to make just one toothbrush?
It takes me about 15 minutes.
15 minutes, that's a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of course when they were first made, they were all done by piecework.
Yeah.
So you only got paid for the ones you made. So obviously speed was the really most important thing. Dawn, I've been watching you now for a while. I don't think I can do this, but can I have a go, at least trying to?
Yeah, be my guest.
Oh dear. So what do I do, Dawn? Talk me through this.
Right, you've got to make a loop.
Make a loop? Oh yes, make a loop.
If you poke it through the
Poke it through a hole. Is that at the hole? No, it's not going
Just be
through.
nice and straight.
Oh dear. I'm going to mess up this one for you, aren't I?
That's all right.
Oh dear. There, I've done it. I've got it through the hole. Okay, then you... Okay, then I watched this bit of what you were doing really carefully. Then you put it in and then you divide in half. You put it like that.
Halfway, yeah. Bend it in half.
Bend it in half?
So they're both straight.
Oh, that's hard to do.
Yeah, takes a bit of practice.
They're really tough. Okay, then I just pull it, do I?
Yeah, the long bit.
The long bit? Okay. That's...
Get more of a grip then.
Oh no, I broke it. This is when you have to start again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, take a few bunches out, yeah.
I'm really sorry,
That's
Dawn.
all right, don't worry.
Okay, so I've really messed up badly here. And if this was piecework, you would have just lost actually a sizable part of your daily income.
Yeah.
Okay, that's as good as I can do.
By inventing the toothbrush, William Addis would be transformed from a jailbird into a successful businessman. Within a decade, he had amassed a vast fortune, and his toothbrush would become a fashionable item for the wealthy.
William Addis's eureka moment was to prove a milestone in dental hygiene. But it was only the first step in a long road towards healthy teeth. After all, each of his toothbrushes cost 6 pennies. This was far too expensive for most of the population.
For a long time, even those who could afford a brush would often share it with other family members. But the toothbrush isn't the only thing people have used to try and clean their teeth.
It's tingling fresh. It's fresh as ice. It's Gibbs SR.
In September 1955, this was the first ever advert seen on British television screens. A milestone for both TV and our teeth.
See your dentist regularly and brush with SR, the tingling fresh toothpaste for teeth and gums. Gibbs SR.
Using weird and wonderful concoctions to clean our teeth isn't a modern invention. It stretches back thousands of years. In ancient Rome, it was common to rinse your mouth with urine in order to give them a pearly white appearance. I'm meeting Dr. Martin Ashley of Manchester University Hospital, who has researched the often bizarre methods that people have used to try to keep their teeth clean.
So, look, Martin, what really interests me is how did people actually brush their teeth in the past?
Well, Joanna, way before we got toothbrushes, some people liked the idea of having clean teeth. Not everybody, but some people did, and they would use pretty much whatever they could get their hands on. And they recognised the need for something a little bit abrasive to clean the dirt off their teeth. This is oyster shells that are ground up.
Can I touch?
Yeah, by all means, yeah.
Ooh, it's pretty abrasive.
It is, isn't it? Rather than show that on my own teeth, I'm going to show you on a Perspex block that we have. We use this when toothbrushes are being tested in toothpaste. It's not quite as hard as enamel, but if we see an effect on the plastic here, we know eventually it would affect the enamel as well.
So you just use your finger?
Yeah, we believe so. And so they'd... forgive me, I won't do it. But to apply that to the surface of a block there.
Oh, yeah.
And presumably that's about the pressure we would use, finger pressure on there. And do this.
Yeah.
I can feel the roughness there. Yeah. This is 1 day. This is 1 day's worth of brushing. You can feel the difference there.
Yeah,
so it doesn't look a lot.
Yes.
But the next day and the next day, and do this year after year, and there'll be nothing left of the teeth. It's too abrasive.
Yes. OK, this would be better, though. This seems... What is this one?
This is soot. This is chimney soot. And so, again, readily available. Rather than just use their finger there, they probably would have used a bit of lint or some sort of cloth.
So what period are we talking about for this?
Probably Tudor times,
Tudor.
I think. And then rubbing some soot on your teeth. And what we...
Well, that's a bit smoother, isn't it?
It is. It's nothing like as gritty as this, and it tends to break up gradually in the water. But the idea, I suppose, it came from a fire, so it was thought to be clean.
Yeah.
And then a mouthful of this looked very dirty, and then as you spat out and rinsed out, your white teeth emerged and looked clean, and as much the contrast, the darkness as anything else. My least favourite one, yes, my least favourite. The idea of...
Can I...
Yeah, again, this is brick dust.
Oh, I can hear it.
Goes right through you, doesn't it?
Oh, that's awful.
I can't imagine this in my mouth.
So this would really wreck your teeth.
Yeah, if I just wipe that clean for you, you feel the difference there.
That's
that draws
very
into-
abrasive.
yeah.
That's the worst, I think.
Yeah.
What would happen if you brushed your teeth with this every day?
Immediately you're getting through onto the enamel of the teeth, and it would just scratch it through and through, so the protective coating goes, the natural bright surface from the tooth goes. Without the enamel there, the tooth is even less resistant to the abrasions.
It wasn't just cleaning our teeth that caused problems. Throughout history, teeth have been at the mercy of everything we've put in our mouths.
Jerry knows that there are certain foods we should eat to help keep our bodies healthy and develop healthy teeth. Why, this very morning, Jerry and his sister Susie started with a good, nourishing breakfast, because eating the right foods can help you to keep healthy, and your teeth will have a better chance to grow and develop.
Unfortunately, we've not always been as well informed as Jerry. For huge swathes of the past, what we ate had a pretty disastrous impact on our teeth. In the Museum of London's archives is a unique record of the changing state of British mouths. In these boxes are the remains of hundreds of long-dead Londoners. Each and every one can tell us something about the diet and bad habits of the past. I'm meeting archaeologist Mike Henderson, who has spent years charting the changing fortunes of our dental health.
Teeth are one of the hardest, densest substances in the human body, and so we can get lots of information about a person's diet, their health, their oral hygiene. So one of the things we see commonly in medieval and earlier populations is dental attrition. So this is wear on the surfaces of the teeth. So you can see here that the teeth have worn down to the dentin, this orange surface there. And that's because the diet was a lot coarser. If you imagine grinding flour on a mortar to make bread, parts of grit are going to get incorporated in that. And as you eat that, it wears the teeth down over time.
Once the stone and grit in bread wore your teeth to the pulp, the nerves would be exposed, and it's likely you'd be in constant agony and suffering.
And this one here, this looks also like a person who's got a bad toothache or a lot of bad toothache.
Now, if you have a lot of cavities, a side effect could be bacteria enters the tooth, and if it reaches the pulp chamber and starts to cause inflammation, pus starts to build up and causes a lot of pressure, and it needs to escape. And this is where you see these sinuses, these abscesses forming.
So this is where pus has tried to escape the jaw.
Yes, to relieve the pressure.
But the pain and decay of the past would be nothing compared to what would happen when our teeth were exposed to a new luxury commodity.
Towards the 18th, 19th century, as sugar becomes more commonplace in the diet, more affordable, all rates of dental disease, decay start to shoot up.
This one here looks a very serious case. I mean, as far as I can see, he or she doesn't seem to have any teeth.
So this is an older female, potentially as a result of decay. She has lost all of her teeth. You are more likely to lose teeth as you get older. You're more exposed to sugar in the diet. But people also had their teeth taken out to prevent further suffering in life.
I'm a modern historian, so I'm actually much more used to dealing with paper in an archive rather than dismembered human skulls. But it really is fascinating to see evidence for what diet and sugar did to our teeth.
The arrival of sugar on British shores was a dark day for our teeth. And our insatiable appetite for all things sweet would have huge social, political, and economic consequences. From its very beginnings, the British Empire was built on the back of the sugar trade. From the 16th century, vast sugar plantations in the West Indies churned out massive quantities of raw cane sugar for export to Europe. In turn, the sugar industry would drive the expansion of the brutal slave trade, which provided the labour needed to harvest and process all that sugar.
It isn't actually sugar that causes decay. Sugar sticks to our teeth, providing fuel for harmful bacteria, which in turn produce an acid. It's this acid that corrodes tooth enamel, eventually leading to cavities.
From sugar's first arrival on these shores, the British public couldn't get enough of the sweet stuff. And over the next few centuries, our teeth would suffer the consequences. But for many years, sugar was the preserve of the rich, initially the nobility, and by the Georgian age, the middle classes. But all that would change in the reign of Queen Victoria.
In 1874, the Prime Minister, William Gladstone, would finally repeal a punitive tax on sugar. For the first time, millions of people could afford to indulge their sweet tooth. In the next few decades, sugar would wreak havoc in the mouths of working-class Britons. The age of mass tooth decay had arrived.
The impact of sugar on British mouths was highlighted during the Boer War. It was discovered that many British soldiers had teeth so bad that mincing machines were needed to allow them to eat. As our teeth began to decay en masse, dentists would have to find new ways to try and stop the rot. In the past, a cavity would usually spell the end for a tooth. What was needed was a way to repair the damage and prevent further decay. One Victorian solution was to hammer small lumps of gold into the cavity, a long and painful procedure. But all that would change with the discovery of amalgam, a blend of mercury and silver, which allowed dentists to fill cavities fast. But fillings would only really become successful when dentists also had the means to quickly and effectively remove the decay. Professor Tim Watson of King's College London has collected together some historic dentist tools to demonstrate just how difficult drilling was in the past.
What would they do to me if I went to a dentist 19th century?
Well, if you had a cavity that needed working on or filling, then they would have used hand instruments. This is an example of a hand drill.
So this is Victorian period?
This is Victorian period.
Yes.
Put that into the end of it, and then that twists, and you twist it between your fingers, and that way you can then remove the decay. Do you want to have a go?
I want to have a go, yes, thank you. Put that over that finger.
That's right. Very good.
Then
Make a dentist of you.
Oh, OK, and it just sort of rests in there.
That's right.
And then I stick it in someone's mouth.
Yeah, carefully, yes.
Carefully,
Yeah.
yes, and
hope you don't go where you shouldn't.
I just stab them.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
it would be really quite tricky to use, and it would only work actually in the very soft decay. It wouldn't cut the sound surface of the tooth at all.
It's no wonder that Victorian dentists had such trouble drilling teeth by hand. On a mineral hardness scale, tooth enamel ranks as tougher than steel.
So this is very, very slow. What came after this?
Well, there were various inventions of mechanical ways to drive the burr around quicker, but the thing that revolutionized dentistry was the development of the treadle dental engine.
Oh, this looks more elaborate.
What we have here is a handpiece and a mechanical drive, and that was powered by a treadle, which was foot operated.
So how fast would this go?
Oh, quite a lot faster. You're in the hundreds of RPM rather than single RPM.
It's quite difficult to do, isn't it?
It requires coordination.
Can I have a go at this as well?
Okay, there we go.
Okay. Okay, cavity, here I come. Okay, so this is my poor patient.
Yeah.
Oh, kind of like sewing machine.
Absolutely, yes.
And then you just put inside the person's mouth and
drill away.
Drill away like that.
Yeah.
This inside your mouth must be quite horrifying.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
And you can
yes.
hear the grinding noise going. So.
Well, yes, but I don't think I'd be coming to you in a hurry.
The arrival of the treadle drill really did change dentistry forever. For the first time, dentists could fight back against cavities and save our teeth from extraction. But to make full use of these new tools, dentists would have to overcome the problem their screaming, struggling patients.
In the distant past, pain relief left a lot to be desired. If you were lucky while having a tooth extracted, you might be given a slug of whiskey. Or you might need to seek comfort in prayers to Saint Apollonia, the patron saint of dentistry.
Pain would only be overcome in the late 19th century through the discovery of an almost magical set of chemicals and gases. The first substance to be used as a general anaesthetic was nitrous oxide, or laughing gas.
This is one way to keep a child quiet. Perhaps you'd like to do this for your child sometime.
Laughing gas had been used as a recreational drug for decades, when in 1844, an American dentist named Horace Wells spotted its potential.
One day, Horace Wells was sitting in the audience of a laughing gas roadshow, where members of the audience would be invited on stage to try some gas. Once intoxicated, these guinea pigs provided entertainment for the rest of the audience. But then, Wells noticed a very interesting thing. One man came off the stage with a very serious gash in his leg, but he felt no pain.
To discover just how effective nitrous oxide is, I'm going to be administered a carefully controlled dose of gas and air, the same mixture of oxygen and laughing gas used in maternity wards. In 1844, when Horace Wells experimented on himself, he had a friend pull out a tooth.
Well, I'm not going to have a tooth extracted, but I do want to test its pain-relieving properties. I have a needle here. Let me just prick myself. Ouch! That really, really hurt. Let's see if this works. Whew. Let's see now what happens. Actually, it doesn't feel like anything. I feel really quite lightheaded. And am I slurring my words? I'm not sure. But anyway, clearly it didn't hurt because I pricked myself a few times that time. Yeah, I don't really know what to say now. Just cut. Okay.
Nitrous oxide undoubtedly worked, but during a public demonstration, Wells failed to give his patient enough gas. He was humiliated and his discovery discredited in the eyes of the medical profession. But that wasn't the end of the story for pain relief, and to find out what happened next, I've come to the School of Pharmacy at University College London. I'm meeting Dr. Stephanie Snow, an authority on the history of anaesthesia.
So, laughing gas is not working. So what comes next?
Well, soon after, dentists and surgeons began to use chemicals. First, they start with ether, and then they use chloroform. Ether is discovered first by American dentists. It was a safer anaesthetic than chloroform, but it was harder to establish unconsciousness.
So how do they administer these drugs? And are they both administered in practically the same ways?
Yes, the chloroform would be dropped or poured onto a sponge.
So this is just an ordinary sponge?
Yep, just an ordinary sponge. The sponge would then be wrapped up in a cloth, a handkerchief, whatever they had to hand, and then it would be pushed over the patient's nose and mouth, and they would have to be held.
That's really suffocating.
That's right, yes.
So this is a very imprecise method of administering anaesthetic.
Completely. I mean, if we look at this, a fatal dose would be something around 30 mils, which would be around that. So if you're using a spoon or a dropper even, it's very easy to go over without realising it.
So there were quite a few fatalities?
Yes. Chloroform particularly had a high level of fatalities. And it was really because of that that by the 1860s, dentists started going back to using nitrous oxide because it was much safer.
Despite the risks, ether and chloroform continued to be widely used alongside laughing gas. But another discovery would soon change pain relief forever.
Well, ether and chloroform were general anaesthetics. What dentists really needed was a way of targeting pain relief, of being able to numb and deaden pain just in one small place in the mouth or jaw. So it's here that we turn to coca in the story of pain relief.
So this is cocaine?
This is cocaine. It's produced from coca leaves. It was used for many years as a stimulant. It was used in tonics, in Coca-Cola, of course. But in 1884, an eye surgeon in Vienna, Karl Koller, discovered that it had anaesthetic properties. And what he did, he made a solution of cocaine, administered it to his eye, and then stuck needles in his eye and found that he experienced no pain.
So this obviously is an advance over chloroform or ether. How did they actually administer this kind of anaesthetic?
Well, in parallel with the discovery of local anaesthetics like cocaine, the hypodermic syringe was invented, and this enabled them to actually deliver cocaine to a specific part of the jaw or the mouth. Then the needle is just there. But as you'll see, it's not very fine at the end.
That's not fine at all.
No.
Actually, that would be quite painful going into you.
Yes, yes.
And then they would just administer it like that.
Yes. But, I mean, if you think about the sort of precision of that, being able to target a particular spot, that was a much safer way of giving dental patients anaesthesia than ether or chloroform.
Yes, yes, no, obviously. Yes.
By injecting cocaine directly into the gums, dentists could now numb individual teeth, providing a much safer and easier way to carry out fillings.
The arrival of pain relief was a major turning point in the history of dentistry. From that moment, dentists could perform more and more complex procedures on our teeth. But painless dentistry did not mean that it lost its reputation as a terrifying and agonizing ordeal.
Nothing better demonstrates the public perception of dentistry than the release in July 1914 of Charlie Chaplin's film, Laughing Gas. Chaplin helped cement the idea that a visit to the dentist was still as barbaric and painful as ever, despite all the new technologies and use of anesthetics. Just a month after the release of Chaplin's film, dentistry would take another huge leap forward during the calamity of the First World War. In August 1914, the British Army went to war without a single dentist. But that would change when one of the most senior British generals got a toothache. When General Douglas Haig was struck down with a sore tooth, he was shocked to discover that there wasn't anyone in British uniform who could help. Instead, a French civilian had to ease his suffering. Haig's toothache would have an immediate impact. By the end of 1914, there were 20 dentists at the front and over 850 by the war's end. But dentists weren't just needed for toothaches, fillings, and dentures. The nature of trench warfare meant that soldiers' heads were often exposed to fire. And high-velocity bullets and shrapnel smashed faces beyond recognition. Huge numbers of men flooded back to Britain with faces seemingly damaged beyond repair. Many of their injuries were so severe, it seemed a miracle they had survived at all. Working in conjunction with plastic surgeons, dentists would be at the forefront of rebuilding these men's faces and their lives. I've come to the Royal College of Surgeons, where there's a unique record of how dentists treated these shattered faces of World War I. I'm meeting historian Kristen Hussey, who has researched these pioneering dental surgeons and their patients.
Kristen, what do we have in front of us here? We've got a file. Yarnold.
Yes?
Tell us about this particular man.
So what we're looking at here is this man's case file. You can see he was wounded in October of 1918, so very unfortunate, very close to the end of the war.
Age 24.
Yes, very young man.
Yes.
And you can see here that he's received a gunshot wound of the chin and a fracture of the mandible.
Gunshot wounds and shrapnel blasts caused some of the most disfiguring of all injuries, often removing entire sections of the face and jaw.
One of the first things they would have done for him was extract teeth. Now, teeth would often have become septic on the trip from the continent back to Britain, so they were one of the first things to go, and indeed, dental surgeons would have been one of the first people he encountered.
What did the dental surgeons actually do? What were they able to do in this period?
One of the #1 things dentists would have done was provided splints to support the jaw in order to aid its healing, but also they crafted incredible dentures and external supports to really recreate the structure of the face, that hard tissue structure that the plastic surgeons could then graft over. And if you look here at the images, you can see that he's lost the majority of his jaw on that side.
It's all gone.
Private Yarnold's injured chin was being repaired with a tubular skin graft growing from his neck.
So not only are the plastic surgeons rebuilding that area with skin grafts, it was also suggested by the consulting dental surgeon they use a bone graft to sort of fill in that gap.
And what bone would be used from his body?
They would have used a graft from the tibia, so the shin bone, to recreate that part of the jaw, which was a very pioneering technique at the time. Unfortunately, with this soldier, it was decided it wasn't advisable. He wasn't strong enough to undergo that treatment.
In the course of the war, over 60,000 British soldiers received facial injuries. These wounds were often so severe that dentists had little idea what they were dealing with, so specialized techniques were needed to diagnose and plan treatment. One method was to make dental casts of the injured soldiers' mouths.
This is quite a striking image. You can see that the gunshot has entered the jaw just there, carrying away a significant proportion of the bone.
So what would happen to a man with a wound like this?
Well, this dental cast would have been really the first step towards his healing, because it would have helped them visualize the injury, but also plan the procedures, the surgical operations to be carried out.
Another important tool for diagnosis was the X-ray, which had been discovered in 1895, but its use was still in its infancy. Dentists and plastic surgeons adapted and improved existing techniques for use on the face.
I thought you would be interested in seeing this one.
So what is this? What does this show?
You can see the extent of the gunshot injury of the lower jaw. Obviously, it's been splinted, probably by someone in a clearing station to send them back to Britain. But all of these dark spots you can see are dirt and probably cloth that have become caught in the wound when the blast was received to the face.
So we have a real problem here with infection.
Exactly. And that was why the dental surgeons were so important in removing teeth. They were trying to make the mouth and the oral cavity no longer infected so they could proceed with treatment. It was a challenge for dental surgeons to try and tackle the extent of these injuries that they had never experienced in peacetime. But for the soldiers who had facial injuries in the war, there really was no final end point. It was always going to be a struggle for them.
There's one major debate. Is war good for medicine? Well, unfortunately, in the case of facial surgery, it was. In the crucible of the First World War, it took pioneers to radically transform surgical practices. In doing so, they literally changed forever the lives of so many men who otherwise would have lived out quite miserable existences.
By harnessing new technologies, dentistry was on the road to becoming the modern science we know today. But at the same time, our teeth were gradually getting worse. Years of sugar consumption meant a whole generation had rotten mouths.
In the early 20th century, dental care was so expensive that some people would choose to have all their teeth extracted in order to avoid a lifetime of dental costs. Believe it or not, having all your teeth removed was considered a perfect gift for a 21st birthday or a newly married bride.
Oh, well, I had very bad teeth pain. You know, they were terrible. They wanted to go and I'd keep having toothache, so I thought, oh, right, get them all out together. So I got them all out.
Just decayed, and I had to get them out, suffering agony and pain.
The universally terrible state of British teeth would take on a whole new importance during the Second World War. Bad teeth wouldn't just be a national embarrassment, they'd become a matter of life and death.
Attacking Messerschmitt, Delhi Ho.
As the Battle of Britain raged and bombing missions began over Germany, the Royal Air Force realized that it had a serious problem. Many pilots were suffering agonizing toothaches while in the air. At high altitudes, cavities and defects in the teeth could become acutely painful, and in consequence, some 5% of missions were being aborted due to toothache. With aircrew in desperately short supply, something needed to be done urgently. To get pilots' teeth in shape, the RAF drafted in a band of young women who would teach them how to clean their teeth and correct years of neglect. These women would become Britain's first hygienists. Frida Rimini qualified soon after the war's end, but completed the same course as the first wave of RAF hygienists. The training they underwent was often quite bizarre.
I remember we started off by carving wax blocks. We were given a tooth and we had to reproduce the tooth. This was to increase our manual dexterity, which I think it did. After we had done that, we moved on to door handles. These were mounted onto the headrest of the dental chair, and the door handle was painted. And we then, with a variety of instruments, had to remove the paint. And having removed the paint, it was then replaced, and we removed it again.
Having trained for 9 months, scraping paint and learning about anatomy, hygienists went to work immediately, improving the teeth of pilots and aircrew.
In those days, the mouths were pretty awful, really. And we'd remove all the debris, and then we'd suggest that they used a toothbrush, might be a good idea. And then we sent them away, and they came back 6 months later, and we did it all again.
Within just a few years, a trip to the dentist wouldn't be complete without a hygienist giving you a scale and polish, and perhaps a bit of friendly brushing advice.
It takes at least 200 brush strokes to get around a complete set of teeth properly. And Sally is told that this should take her approximately 3 minutes every time she cleans her teeth.
During the Second World War, millions of ordinary Britons had been given free medical and dental treatment by the armed forces. When peace finally arrived, many believed that this duty of care should be taken on by the state.
To make this happen, the government commissioned an economist named William Beveridge to investigate what ordinary Britons' lives were like. His findings would lead to the creation of the welfare state and a new National Health Service.
This leaflet is coming through your letterbox one day soon, or maybe you have already had your copy. Read it carefully. It tells you what the new National Health Service is and how you can use what it offers. Study the leaflet, then keep it by you. You'll need it for reference.
From the 5th of July 1948, all aspects of medical care would be provided free of charge. When the first wave of patients arrived, dentists set to work rectifying years of neglect.
There was a hell of a lot of work to do when the NHS came into being. Mainly extractions to begin with, and dentures. And then, the fact that you could save teeth pretty painlessly, so gradually seep through the population. And they came and had their dental treatment, had the fillings done.
In just 9 months, NHS dental technicians made over 33 million replacement teeth, and dentists filled over 4 million cavities. There were long queues outside some dental surgeries, and overworked dentists were seeing hundreds of patients a day. In the first few years, the NHS dental budget was more than double what had been planned. So, in the early 1950s, charges for dental treatment had to be introduced.
The arrival of the NHS was probably the most important change in British dentistry. After all, for the first time, ordinary people could afford to go to the dentist. But the democratization of dental care did not lead to significant changes in our attitudes. Most people would still only go to the dentist if forced to by pain.
NHS dentists would work wonders fixing Britain's rotten mouths. That was only half the battle. The war for Britain's teeth would be won not in the dentist's chair, but in the bathroom. Of the thousands of new innovations and dental products that found their way into British homes, there was one that really would transform the state of our teeth.
I've heard a great deal about a chemical that can be used on the teeth to help prevent decay. Is that a good thing to use?
It certainly is. We use a fluoride solution, and we have evidence that for some people, this fluoride treatment helps prevent decay.
The addition of fluoride to toothpastes and some water supplies, coupled with increasing numbers of people cleaning their teeth, had a dramatic impact on British mouths. In the 1960s, over 40% of all adults had no teeth at all. But by the year 2000, that figure had fallen to just 6%. British mouths had been transformed beyond recognition in just a few decades. And today, a set of healthy, straight white teeth is considered a mark of wealth and success. If you can afford it, you too can be the proud owner of a perfect smile. A visit to the dentist today is unrecognizable from just 100 years ago, let alone from the days of the brutal barber surgeon.
But despite all of the advances of the past 500 years, 1 in 10 of us are still terrified at the prospect of a dentist poking and prodding at our teeth.
In some ways, it's not surprising. Our mouths are among the most personal and sensitive parts of our body, so strong reactions are understandable. But that doesn't explain it all.
It seems to me that the past still exerts a powerful influence on our current attitudes and fears, but also on our collective memory. Millennia of pain and terror are deeply embedded within the fabric of our society. Phrases like pulling teeth litter our language, recalling those darker days. So, despite all the great scientific advancements, pain-free trips to the dentist, and those gleaming Hollywood smiles, we still can't seem to forget dentistry's long and bloody history.